everyone! Welcome to this tutorial on installing macOS Catalina on VMware. Before we dive in, let's briefly talk about virtualization. Virtualization is like creating a computer inside your computer. It lets you run another operating system called the guest OS inside your current system called the host OS without needing a second machine. To manage virtual machines, we use a piece of software called a hypervisor. There are two types of hypervisor. Type 1 hypervisor, also called a bare metal hypervisor, runs directly on hardware with no host OS in between. Meanwhile, a Type 2 hypervisor, also called a hosted hypervisor, runs on top of your existing operating system just like a normal application. VMware Workstation and VirtualBox are examples of Type 2 hypervisor. So for this tutorial, we're using a Type 2 hypervisor, specifically VMware Workstation, because it's easy to install and works well on regular Windows laptops. Before we proceed, here's an important disclaimer. So the first thing I did was inspect my laptop to see how much CPU, RAM, and storage I have. This helps determine how many resources I can allocate to the virtual machine so both Windows and macOS run smoothly. For this, I pressed Windows plus R and typed msinfo32 and hit enter. This opened the system information window. Here are my laptop specs as seen on the screen. Inspecting your system first is important. If you allocate too many resources to a virtual machine, your host can slow down or become unstable. I also noticed a hypervisor was already enabled on my system. So to fix this, I opened Command Prompt as administrator and run the following. This temporarily disables the Windows hypervisor so VMware can function properly. And now that the host system is ready and the hypervisor is disabled, the next step is to prepare the necessary files for our macOS installation. We need three main things. First, the VMware Workstation Pro installer. This is the software that allows us to create and run virtual machines on our Windows laptop. Now let's download the executable file. Installing VMware involves several steps and can take some time. So for this tutorial, we'll skip ahead once it's installed. Next is the macOS Catalina ISO. This is the virtual installer file for macOS. It contains the operating system and all the necessary files to install macOS inside VMware. The download and preparation can take a long time. So again, for this tutorial, we'll skip ahead once the ISO is ready. Lastly, the VMware Unlocker. This is a tool that allows VMware to recognize macOS as a valid guest operating system. Without it, the macOS will not appear as an option when creating a new virtual machine. I installed version 1.1.3. Now let's extract the Unlocker zip file and run the unlocker.exe as administrator. This patches VMware so that macOS becomes an available option for our virtual machine. Once it finishes running, VMware is now ready to create a macOS VM. Let's just wait for it to finish, and once it's done, press enter to continue. Now that everything is installed and patched, we can create the macOS VM. Open VMware Workstation and click Create a new virtual machine. Choose Custom or Advanced, as this gives us full control over settings like CPU, RAM, and disk size. Then click Next. Select Installer Disk Image file and browse for the macOS Catalina ISO we've downloaded earlier and click Next. Now choose Apple macOS as the guest OS and macOS 10.15 Catalina as the version. Thanks to the Unlocker tool, this option now appears. I noticed that the default storage path for the virtual machine was inside OneDrive. Storing a virtual machine in a cloud-synced folder like OneDrive can cause problems because these services constantly sync files to the cloud. This can slow down the VM, cause errors, or even corrupt the virtual machine files. To avoid these issues, I created a dedicated folder on my D drive. This is to store the virtual machine locally. And then click Next. For CPU, I'll assign one processor with 4 cores. For RAM, I'll assign 3 GB. Based on our earlier system inspection, this leaves enough memory for Windows while giving macOS enough to run smoothly. and then click Next. For networking, I'll choose Bridged so the VM connects directly to the network. Leave all other options as default. For storage, I'll allocate 50 gigabytes and keep the setting Store Virtual Disk as a single file as a default setting, and click Next. For this part, you can name the virtual machine however you like, but for me, I leave it as is. Review the summary and click Finish. VMware will now create the virtual machine. Now, click Power on this virtual machine. If a warning appears like this, saying side channel mitigations are enabled, click Exit. Make sure to shut down the virtual machine and follow the link shown to disable the mitigation. After configuration, power on the virtual machine again. VMware is now booting from the macOS ISO. It will begin copying files and preparing the installer. This part may take several minutes, so let's be patient. Choose your preferred language and click Next. Then go to Disk Utility. Continue, select Virtual SATA Drive, click Erase, and choose any name you like and then click Erase afterwards. This prepares the disk so macOS can be installed properly. Close Disk Utility, click Install macOS, leave everything as default and click Next. The installation will begin. This process can take some time, so let it run. And let's just wait. Let's be patient, guys. After installation, select your country. I selected Philippines. Next, macOS will guide you through creating a user account and optional settings like Siri and screen time. For this tutorial, we'll leave everything as default. macOS will finalize your setup and load the desktop. This might take a few minutes, so let's just wait and be patient. Now that the macOS Catalina is installed, let's explore the interface by opening several apps. Finder is similar to Windows File Explorer. It's used to browse files, manage folders, and even handle storage. Launchpad, on the other hand, works like the Windows Start menu, but instead of a list, it shows a clean grid of app icons, making it easy to find and launch applications. In addition, I also open Photos, Music, Trash, System Preferences, Calendar, Contacts, Notes, Safari, which is macOS default web browser, along with Terminal, the command line tool similar to Command Prompt or PowerShell. I even played a quick game of chess and checked out podcasts and explored a few other apps. I also took some time to explore the menu bar at the top of the screen. Meanwhile, the dock at the bottom makes switching between apps quick, smooth, and visually pleasing. Overall, the macOS graphical user interface is intuitive and clean. While it feels a bit slow inside VMware, it's still smooth enough for basic use. The icons are visually appealing, easy to understand, and have a unique style. Features like the dock, spotlight search, and the adaptive menu bar make navigation very simple, guys. Compared to Windows, macOS focuses on minimalism and a streamlined workflow, which I found refreshing. Also, take note that before closing VMware or powering up the virtual machine, make sure to shut down macOS properly. This prevents file corruption and keeps the virtual machine healthy. Once macOS has fully shut down, you can safely close VMware Workstation. Here's a pro tip, guys. Always take a snapshot of your virtual machine before making major changes, because if something goes wrong later, like a software crash, misconfiguration, or a failed update, you can quickly restore the virtual machine back to the snapshot. This keeps your work safe and prevents you from losing time or data. Thank you for watching, guys. If you have questions or feedback, leave a comment below. Enjoy exploring macOS on your virtual machines.